Welcome back to the most audacious EMS podcast on planet Earth, the Paramedic AF Show. We are here to challenge, encourage, and sometimes hurt your feelings. This isn't for the weak, the woke, or the apathetic. This is a show for the ones who show up and give a damn, the bold and the brazen. So stand up, stay vigilant, and enjoy the show. All of you guys missed it. Michelle was doing the alpha female cat call, trying to attract all of the kittens.
No.
And it wasn't like this meow or pss, 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 pss. No, it was meow.
Well, I was sitting here meowing at them. I was calling them independently. I was calling, Serena, meow, and then Sushi, meow, and then Possum, meow, and none of them would listen. So I was like, meow.
And she did that right as I walked in the room.
If you didn't know, I'm not very good at calling pussy. You're so welcome.
I'm just gonna let that lay where it fell, so to speak.
Lay where it lays. Welcome to the Paramedic AF Show.
God. Hey, guys.
Ironically, we're talking about boundaries today.
Yeah, well, you can clearly tell we have none, so it's fine. We're gonna get. Have you guys seen those 3D printed Batman hats? That
Yes.
the bat cowls that people are putting on their cats, and the audio is playing the Batman Begins music, and then it's like you hear as if the cat was talking is meow 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 meow. They put the helmet on and it goes meow 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 meow.
I want one so bad. I want at least one so bad. I will chase them around the house screaming meow.
Love me.
I can't force it, but I can try.
Declan comes by it honestly.
Stop.
Now y'all have seen it. You've heard it.
We are not doing this
You've
today.
heard it, but now you've seen it.
We're not doing this today until you volunteer. Start the episode just right now.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2. No, not episode 2. Our second episode of video, but
it's 38.
Yeah, I think
38.
so. I think so. They're all running together because the shift shorts and these episodes are close in number now, so I keep mixing them up. Anyway, sorry it's been a little inconsistent lately, but kind of with the audio, I could usually turn around the editing really quick. We'd record
like same day.
Yeah, like sometimes same day or next day or whatnot. This is going to take a little bit longer, but what I'm trying to do is get it to where the long episodes are going to be back on Sundays. And then the shift shorts, instead of being done the shift shorts and Listen Linda's, instead of being same day, it's probably going to be like 2 days later. And a lot of that is, it's not so much the editing, it's we don't have super nice computers. So if any of you feels inclined to donate a Mac, that would be awesome. Or if you've got some random Alienware computer that you don't use anymore, would love it. But in the meantime, it's literally just a computer just shits out halfway through editing the video. So
The other day, I thought Daniel was just going to throw it in the front
I
yard.
about had a fucking stroke. It was pretty bad. So anyway, we're working on it, but we're kind of figuring out a system. So I'd say give us another week or so, and we should be back in a pretty consistent pattern with what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. I would say Daniel, he would edit for about 10 minutes, and then the computer would decide to turn off, and then it would turn into a... And I'm just like, oh no. But it was the face. It wasn't just that it happened. It wasn't even what he said. It was the face. It was the clenched fist.
Yeah, I'm ready to not be poor and be stuck with a computer, like a cheap ass computer.
Listen, Linda, we're not that poor. Just.
Well, I know.
Anyways.
Yeah. So anyway, something that we want to talk about today is something that we've not only encountered in our careers, but we've been encountering with other people who are new to the job or are dealing with problems in the job. And that is drawing boundaries. And this topic is really funny because it extends into everything. Mm-hmm. And the reason we're talking about it this month and focusing on it as part of mental health is because it's kind of almost, I would almost say therapy 101 of if you're having issues in life with people in your life, you probably have issues with boundaries. And I
which
think
includes people pleasing, which, I mean, really, if you have any kind of trauma, you're a people pleaser to some extent, whether it's personal and or professional.
yeah. And we in general as a profession across the board don't do well with boundaries. And not just talking about people's, personal relationships and that kind of stuff, but we're all up each other's asses all the time. You have a partner you're stuck on the truck with for 12 to 24 hours or more. There's still agencies that are doing 48-hour shifts on the ambulance. Um that's a long time to be up in someone's space. You hear phone calls, you're part of conversations, the family comes to visit, you hear things, you see things. It's a bloody, bloody mess.
Well, and it's hard, it's hard to not share. If you hear a phone call, it's like, here, I'm here to talk. And then you end up talking. And then it's like, oh, well, I experienced this. And then you're, I guess, in a sense, oversharing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's okay. Like the stuff that's happened to me in my life, for the most part, I'm very open with.
Mm-hmm.
But well, one, I accept that too. I still have a boundary of what I accept as a response to it,
Mm-hmm.
versus some people don't have boundaries, period. And they
Yeah.
don't understand, like, hey, that's not shareable. Plus, what we're going to get into is it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to have different types of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a time and a place. Like, there's a time and a place that I might share, something with
Mm-hmm.
maybe a coworker versus like a patient versus you versus a child.
There was a old partner of mine who I started in medic class with him. I ended up taking a year off, so I graduated with the next class. But something he said that it's not even so much that this is the way it should be, it's just more that it's the way it is. And that is you should only tell somebody what you're okay with telling everybody.
Which is very true.
Because people love to run their mouths. People love the verbal tea more than they love the herbal tea. And you have zero privacy.
Yeah.
If you're going through a divorce, everybody's going to know about it.
And everyone's going to pick sides.
Oh God, yes.
Everyone's going to pick sides no matter, because there's, for example, and this is true to anything. For example, this is not happening, but let's say Daniel and I were getting a divorce. Like,
Well, we'd have to be married first, but point being,
whatever. Situationally.
we're getting there. Another month.
Situationally.
Yeah.
Like, someone is going to hear your side, someone is going to hear
Yeah.
my side, or what they have seen. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You may have an insight on something that I have a different insight on something, and then everybody else is going to have a different opinion because they don't agree with how we live our lives.
Right. Yeah. So that's just one example of the boundary issues in EMS. That's not even all of it. That's just the warm up. That's the part that's the low hanging fruit that everybody deals with.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it begs the question why boundaries are important. And honestly, the easiest way to describe why boundaries are important is to show what it's like when they're not in place. And I mean, yes, you could use the geopolitical example of, well, if you don't have any borders, then anybody can come in and fuck your shit up, which is true. We're living that right now in this country. But anyway.
We're not going.
No, I know.
Linda.
I know. I'm not. It's fine. We're good. Anyway. But when you don't have that inherent accountability, when you don't have those boundaries that are not just your identity, but it's your fortress, if you will, your life that you need to protect, and that in parcel of that is your mental well-being. Mm-hmm. Because if you allow everybody in, then suddenly everybody becomes a part of your mental health. So we're sorting out how boundaries work is not only crucial to your personal happiness, your personal well-being, but it's also crucial to your career development, because all of this works into your promotions, the kinds of jobs you get, the opportunities that you miss sometimes. So honestly, I think the best place to start with this is talking about personal boundaries.
Well, like you said, I mean, therapy 101 is going to tell you that you need personal boundaries to begin with.
Yeah. And I would go as far, and I think this first point might, I don't know if I'd say rub some people wrong, but might make you scratch your head, but you need boundaries with yourself
Hmm.
because you do you do have this tug of war between your brain and your body and your impulses versus logic. And you know, hey, I I know I shouldn't eat this or that, or I shouldn't do this or that. You know that in your head, but if you don't have any boundaries in place in your life, you're still going to end up doing it anyway. You're still going to end up eating it anyway. You're still going to feel like shit, and you're still going to go in this vicious cycle because you don't actually draw a line. And you can call it discipline, you can call it any number of things, but drawing those boundaries with yourself and recreating or reprogramming habits is something that if you don't get that right, nothing else in your life is going to make sense. Nothing else in your life is going to go anywhere because you're truly just a slave to your own whim, your own impulses, and whatever it is, whatever sphere it is.
Well, I feel like the quote unquote personal boundary is very much, it has multiple names to it. Like you named discipline. I feel like it's also kind of like our moral compass. How we are going to behave, what you're going to allow yourself to do. And obviously, except from others, kind of creeps into the other stuff. But what you allow yourself to do, it's basically the rules that you live by. And if you cross this, then there may be no returning. Just like
Hmm.
with eating or the lack of exercise, or in your personal relationship on your side with cheating or education or, and I know that sounds a little vague, but like
Hmm.
you literally have to make, think of boundaries as like rules. And like when talking about yourself, think about it basically as rules and what you're going to tolerate, how you're going to live by. And if you have nothing, then you're
Well,
really anything.
it kind of comes back to what we've talked a lot about on the show, which is core values,
Yeah.
and that it not only for an agency, for a team of people, but as an individual, if you don't have a set of core values, your core values are really your boundaries
Hmm.
with yourself. You say, okay, when I'm in positions where my options are A and B, this is the governing principle that I evaluate those situations under.
Hmm.
And so you need to have that clearly defined because if you don't, then it's just going to be chaos and you are allowing other people, other influences, other things, other impulses to rule your life and to steal your joy, steal your vision, steal whatever you could become. You're going to lose. And it's not it nothing not you're not going to be able to apply yourself to anything because you don't do the hard work of actually owning it and making those hard decisions.
Well, and I think something important that's going to help you with the boundaries, the rules, pick a word. You need to have, like you said, goals in life, long
Hmm.
term and short term, because those like principles and morals and decision making is going to get you there.
Hmm.
But also you need to have a why. And we've talked about this not with the core values, but we've talked about this with having goals with an agency, but also if like a supervisor, governing body, whatever makes a decision that the vast majority of people don't understand or don't agree with, if you explain the why, they may not they still might not agree with you, but they can understand like, hey, maybe instead of going from A to C, we need to go A, B, C
Hmm.
type thing. And
Yeah.
same with like long-term versus short-term goals. Maybe your long-term goal is, I don't know, something. Maybe your long-term goal is education, but really while you're getting all your certifications, you have to work like two jobs along with certifications and go to school and do this, and you have to make 50 different stops before you can get to your long-term goal. But you need to make like working and education decisions based on what you want long-term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. It
Okay.
does. And this that extends into boundaries that you need to have with your significant other as well.
Mhm.
And this is something that I really didn't do well with for a long time. I literally I don't even know that I outright said this before. I'm really glad you met me in the time of life when you did and you didn't know me before. That goes for most of y'all. Um, but I literally would shift my goals to accommodate whoever my significant other was at the time. Like literally that was my underlying principle. And without that other person, I literally I just worked. That's it. I didn't have any other aspirations. Yeah, I'd occasionally focus on my fitness a little bit. But
He basically paid rent for an empty box.
yeah, pretty much.
He was never
Pretty
home.
much. I literally would just come home and watch Game of Thrones and drink a beer and eat, really good pizza. And that was my life. And I would, do that, go to bed, wake up, go to work, come back, rinse and repeat. The same shit over and over and over again. That was awful. And it hurt, it just it pains me to say it. But what you should be doing is you need to set that compass internally. You need to set what your guiding, not just your guiding principles are, but what your goals are, what you want to do. What is your purpose in life? And not just the whole, oh, I want to help people. Everybody fucking says that. Everybody fucking says that, especially in public service. Everybody said it and thought it. I'm sorry, it doesn't count. Like that's
What's funny though is that was never my intention.
well, but you know what I'm saying. For most people, and it
Yeah.
shifted a little bit because the barriers to entry of this job have decreased a lot, and I really hate it. We really need to bug off a lot more people, but that's a whole separate conversation. But point being, in your personal relationships, obviously, if you're hearing this and you're in a committed marriage relationship, whatever, this is a difficult conversation because it's hard for people to change something mid course. It can happen. I've seen it happen plenty of times, but that's hard.
Want to know what you can do? Send your significant other that you're having problems with this podcast. Be like, yo, there's some stuff in here that I'm curious about. Tell me what you think.
But you need to say, hey, whatever this other thing is what makes me feel satisfied, is what makes me happy, is what makes me feel fulfilled as an individual. And when you define those things, that sense of being fulfilled and purpose and all that will boost your relationship because you will both be able to support each other and push each other and make it a mission, make it a team effort. So having those boundaries to say, hey, you know what? This is what I have to do today. This is what my objectives are, what I have to do. Let's figure this out. Don't be a douche about it, but at the same time, if you are somebody who says, "Hey, you know what? I really feel this is my calling. This is what I'm going to go do." And your significant other is like, "But really? But why?" And they're cutting you down at the knees. You kind of need to reevaluate that relationship. Even if it's a long-term marriage, you really need to evaluate that because is that person actually loving you? Are they actually being a healthy partner?
Well, so I want to throw out when having these difficult conversations, I want to refer back to our book of the month that I know we were a little spotty trying to get up on the air and everything, but the Four Agreements, that was I believe it was our February book.
That was one of the first ones we did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was February. I think it was the second
Mhm.
book that we did. We shared some stuff from it. We didn't talk about it as much. I don't think we were trying to figure out a good rhythm for it, but I want to refer everybody back to the Four Agreements because if you start implementing those in your life, that's actually a boundary not just for yourself, but for others because it's basically four agreements that you make with yourself on how you're going to live your life that helps you set boundaries and it also helps guide you in the behavior that you're going to accept. Because we talk about accepting, good and bad behaviors from other people, but a lot of times the behavior that I almost said spouse, but your partner, puts on you is often different. Are we going to let a patient, most people, are we going to let a patient tell you, you're a fat fuck that shouldn't be in this job and blah, 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 and everything else? Well, we're not going to feel, or for the most part, most people are not going to feel and care because we're like, you don't know me. You don't know nothing about my life. Shut up. But
I just start laughing at that point.
oh my God. The person that was talking smack about me a couple weeks ago. Oh God. Anyways, that's a whole story. But if your significant other says that to you, it's going to hurt more.
Yeah.
You might, especially if they say it often enough, you might start to accept that as the reality of yourself. And whether you're overweight or not is beside the point. It's there should be boundaries that you set that's we can have a grown-up conversation, but you're not going to call me names.
Yeah.
Like I can honestly say, like hand to all of the gods, Daniel and I have never had a fight in the sense of yelling, screaming, name calling. Have we had disagreements? Often.
Has it been intense before? Yep.
But has it ever been a fight?
No.
It has
Mhm.
literally 100% never been a fight. Because, well, one, I feel like in our communication, the 4 agreements genuinely has helped. Um, but being able to set boundaries of we're not name calling, we're not yelling. If it starts to get to a point where we're feeling that frustrated, we need to take a break. Like
Mhm.
ground rules is something when you're talking to your spouse or partner, but also children.
Yep.
Having ground rules,
Boundaries with your kids.
boundaries with your kids, but you can also substitute the word ground rules. You know, when you first start a relationship,
We don't negotiate with terrorists. That's our parenting ground rule.
I mean, yes. But
Anyway, sorry.
when you start dating somebody new, what is a
Yeah.
ground rule that most people say? You know, something very common that I've heard from friends. I mean, it's my personal thing. We've talked about it. Like, I don't accept cheating, which I'm pretty sure most people, unless they're in an open relationship, will agree. But it's like, okay, define what cheating is to you. You know, okay, this is Daniel sat me down and was like, hey, this is my goal in life. Like, I support your goals, but like you're not going to stop me from mine. Yes, we have had like
Mhm.
side steps, but our so like if we're at A, we've had a side step to like B and C, but D is still our long-term goal. It's
Yeah.
still having the communication. Like when we've made job changes, we've set boundaries of what our expectations are
Mhm.
for the family. Like today, we set boundaries with how we were going to break up who did what housework and who did what homework with what child.
Mhm.
Like boundaries is something that you have to discuss for expectations in your life.
Yeah.
It's literally the ruling aspect of your life.
Well, and it's an opportunity for you to to teach your kids, but also to treat your kids well and teach them how to set boundaries. I can't tell you how many times both of us have had times where we've had to look at the kids and be like, "Hey, we are wore out. We are overstimulated. We need a break.
Mhm.
We love you guys. We appreciate you. We're proud of you. It's nothing to do with that. We have a lot on our plates and we need you to respect this and back off."
Mhm.
And I remember there was one
Not
time.
so much in those words. Usually it's like, "Hey, we're overstimulated. Like, can you give us like 5 minutes of quiet time type thing."
Well, I mean, but I've had very frank conversations with them, and there's been times where I've had to apologize to them and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap at you.
Mhm.
I'm stressed. I haven't slept. I am not doing well, but that is still my responsibility to manage, not yours."
Do
And
you want to know my favorite thing though? When whether it's on weekends or after school, Kaylee and Declan will sometimes, not even frequently, but they'll come to us and be like, "I'm overstimulated."
Kaylee's really good about it.
Yeah,
She'll
Kaylee's
just
very
ask,
good
"Can I
at
have
it.
some alone time, please?"
Can I have some quiet time? And it's
Yeah.
not even to watch TV. Sometimes she'll go and lay in her room
Hmm.
like and just stare at the wall. Like
Yeah.
she just needs quiet. But also, there was one shift. I can't remember which shift it was, but it's been within the last like month that I had like 12 calls in 24 hours
Hmm.
and like half of them were ALS shit shows. And we were butting up to each other. We did shift change with each other and I took the kids home and Kaylee was like, "What's wrong, Mom?" And I'm like, "Baby, I have literally not slept."
Hmm.
And she's like, "Well, Mommy, after breakfast, why don't we have some quiet time and you can take a nap?" And I was just like, "Wake me up for lunch." Just wake me up for lunch.
But that's a good example of when you train your kids to think maturely and to set boundaries for themselves. Like we've told the kids before, if you feel stressed, rather than lashing out at one of your siblings, come and tell us. You can have a cool. You can go off by yourself. We're not going to give you any shit about it. Go off by yourself, chill out for a little bit, calm down, watch something, read something, listen to music, whatever works. And magically, I mean, they're kids. They're going to crawl up each other's asses and piss each other off sometimes. But in general, it works really well. And it allows you to treat your kids, I don't want to say like adults, because, I mean, they're kids.
They're still children, yeah.
But teaching them to think in those terms when most parents don't. Most parents parent by convenience. When all you do is snap at your kids just because they piss you off and that's it, there's no rhyme or reason to it. That's causing trauma on your kids because you're not clearly defining boundaries for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have it very clearly spelled out for the kids. Hey, here's what we expect of you. When we give you something to do, this is the expectation that's going to get done. And if you don't do it, here's whatever the consequences are, whatever is pertinent to that. And kids thrive on that. Adults thrive on that. We all thrive on when you clearly define expectations, but you have to fucking communicate them. You
Well-
have to spit it out.
Well, and structure. I mean, for example, not to make this about me or us or anything, but it is a good example.
Mhm.
So I, was a single mom. I had the 2 kids and I was going to school, so like I had to implement some kind of structure. Granted, my clinical OCD, my trauma, everything else, I thrived on that. So, when Daniel and I got together and, when we decided to start thinking about living together, all the things, mixing families, I was like, okay, this is the schedule that I have had the kids on for like literal at this point. Kaylee was 8. No, yes, no, 7.
Yeah, 7.
Something like that. I was like, they have literally been on the schedule for, this amount of time. This is what we do every day of the week, 365 days a year. Obviously you have some exceptions with like bedtime.
Yeah.
But I explained that boundary with Daniel. I was like, the kids thrive on it. I was like, if, they deviate, all the rest of it, we need to stick to it. And now, is there even any question about it?
Mm-mm.
I mean, we don't even, in theory, for certain things, don't even have to, we use Alexa a lot in our house.
Yeah.
But the kids are so used to it, they start getting like hungry at the like normal time that we have meals. They have snackies at the same time. Even though they're no longer taking naps, we still have an assigned quiet time on Saturdays and Sundays. When they first get home from school, what did they do when they first got home today? They had 20 minutes of quiet time to just decompress before we jumped into homework. And when they have those expectations that it gets to a point where if we have a busy Saturday that we can't have quiet time, it's more of a, we can't have quiet time. And then everybody's dead by the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a very nutshell summary of, why it's important to have those personal boundaries and kind of the general areas affected by it.
I do want to throw in before we step out something that's important with the boundaries with your significant other and your kids. I think you mentioned it, but we kind of glossed over it. It's also expressing your needs. Like
Yeah.
when it comes to your love language, some people may laugh about it, but there is something to be said about how you receive love. 9 times out of 10, I can't even say 9 times out of 10, just a good amount of us will express in a certain way, but we might receive differently.
Yeah.
So like some people, acts of service is their natural, I feel like in this field especially, acts of service might be our natural go-to to how we express love, but that's not how we receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if you were expressing in acts of service and I'm like, well, but that's not mine and you're not meeting your need, you may be like, well, I'm loving you. It's like, but not appropriately. And people don't mean that in a hateful way.
Yeah.
But
It should
it's
still
genuinely
be acknowledged and appreciated.
Yeah. Like the 2 of us, we don't argue, fight, or get butthurt about like the house being picked up or laundry or dishes or whatever, because one, we know that someone is always at work all the time, so it gets done when we can. Like today, we divvied up and kicked butt. But like we have to set those boundaries and communicate what we need.
Yeah.
Same with kids. We were actually surprised when Kaylee took her love languages quiz to find out what her love language was actually not, she's a gift giver, but that's not how she receives love. And we were surprised. And that is very important when setting boundaries. Like, hey, I'm so glad you did the dishes, but like I would rather cuddle and watch a movie with you for 45 minutes or TV show for 45
Hmm.
minutes and then I will totally do the dishes later. Like one means more than the other
Yeah.
to have that communication and that
Hmm.
comfort, safety.
Yeah. Which and that translates to the workplace.
Mhm.
And that in I don't mean that in a hippy dippy, touchy feely kind of way, but legitimately learning how people feel appreciated, how people feel motivated is incredibly important. It's hard work because everybody's a little different, but you have to adapt to your people because you want them to still want to show up.
Mhm.
Um so kind of translating to talking about boundaries at work. The first place where we had to draw those boundaries with our coworkers, with the people that we're on the truck with,
Mhm.
the people that we are stationed with. It's so important to communicate clearly up front the things that are okay and not okay. And
Mhm.
no, you don't have to have like the ultimatum conversation when you first meet each other and you're trying to pick breakfast. Like, okay, that's maybe not the time. For some people do that, and some
How
people
about
are
the
just like,
awful waffle or else?
I mean, a grand slam's a good way to sort out the day on the truck. But point being, it's there should there in there's a degree to which there's some things we shouldn't have to explain. You shouldn't have to deal with how to be professional as part of those first conversations. Unfortunately, that is all too common and necessary in this job because a lot of folks are just slobs.
Mhm.
They are unprofessional, inappropriate slobs.
Mhm.
And it's and we have to have those basic conversations now because so many people have lost that pride in the job. But outside of that, i- there's this. I love it how no matter where you are in your career, you always have people who either look down on you
Mhm.
because oh they've been in it longer than you, or the people who are just like fuck you, I'm new, I don't care. Like there's it's hard to find a sweet spot in there a lot of times because people just tend to rally to whatever age group they're in. And
We're getting up there.
well, and it's like we talked about before, our because of the older populace of providers retiring, we're suddenly in the top, percentile of senior people, and it just makes just like dirt in my mouth trying to say that.
But like
But
we said, 8 years ago, burnout was 3 to 5 years, and now we've moved down to about 1 to 3.
yeah, if you're lucky.
I feel like some of what is skewing that is there are some medical schools that are now requiring their people to come in. So, I mean, the people that come in to do ride alongs during medical school are still counted towards like our
Yeah.
populace, but then they leave. So, I mean, I feel like there's a decent amount of stuff that is skewing it, but especially after COVID and everything else, it probably holds pretty true.
Well, so I found over the course of my career, there's two different ways that I've had to set boundaries with coworkers. The most common up front was dealing with the people who they would try to talk down to you. They would try and belittle you for doing your job well. They would give you shit for going the extra mile. And some people it's just they just make it in passing and it's not like a problem. You just ignore it and carry on and eventually they shut up. But there's some people that won't let it up. And I there were several times in my career I had to sit down older people, especially when I was a brand new medic. As a brand new EMT, it sucked because it's like I've never done this before. Like
Hmm.
I got like royally yelled at in public as a brand new EMT. Actually, I was thinking I was a driver at the time. The one it was in the middle of a dialysis clinic, and like I thought we were supposed to zig when we were supposed to zag, and I had let go of the stretcher, and my partner's just walking off of the stretcher, and then the back of the stretcher bangs up against something in the clinic. He turns around, looks at me, and just I mean he wanted to fucking kill me, and like yelled at me in front of everybody, and then when we
Hmm.
got back to the truck, just fucking tore me a new one. And those situations are hard to manage for you younger providers because you feel like you did something wrong. You made a mistake. So it's not like you have a quote high ground to challenge them on, but at the same time it's not appropriate for someone to talk to you that way. Period, the end. Especially in the context where nobody was in danger, nobody was hurt, like it was a logistical error.
Well, I feel like in cases like that, it really comes down to I know we've made a delineation between general respect and treating people with just general humanity. Like,
Decency.
there we go.
Yeah.
It was somewhere. It was somewhere in there.
Well, and it's important to learn. And we had a conversation with a friend of ours who was
Mhm.
a newer cert and
Mhm.
is new at a job and was having issues with their FTO treating them like shit
Mhm.
and not respecting them as an individual, not even showing them common decency, common courtesy.
Mhm.
And what it really comes down to when you're in that kind of situation, so if you're a younger provider, you're someone who's newly certified, you're in school, whatever the case may be, at whatever level, this applies to every level in public service. When you're in that kind of a situation, before you jump up the chain of command, because if that's your first thing, that's a reputation you don't fucking want. You really, really don't want that. Uh, you need to go to that person, and maybe you need someone to come with you. Maybe you need a backup buddy, whatever. Depends on the dynamic. But you need to go to that person and tell them, hey, I admit I'm new. I fucked up. I did this. I did that. Whatever it is. I want to learn. But it is not okay for you to talk to me like that. For you to talk to me basically like I'm a dog. So we need to address this because moving forward, this is not okay. And most of the time, if you have that conversation, most people are not ready to have it. Like
Mhm.
they're not gonna buck you, and if they do, they're fucking miserable anyway, and they probably can't work well with anyone. So
Well,
it's not just you.
and people like that have a reputation.
Oh God, yes they do.
Another boundary, just as you were kind of talking about. So, I'm a firm believer, and I think we've said this on the show before, that really the difference between an ALS assessment and BLS assessment is like the use of a monitor and some. Yes, you do. Please don't get me wrong. Paramedics do have a deeper knowledge of like pathophysiology and stuff, but like if you're asking a general chest pain patient like your OPQRST questions, if for whatever reason the EMT made initial contact, I'm a believer that let them ask and I'll interject a question
Hmm.
if I'm asking questions and they think of something that like I haven't asked that they know about. I'm all for tag teaming an assessment as long as the two of us are there to like actually hear. Like we're
Hmm.
not duplicating questions and stuff like that. But, talking about partners and having tough conversations, I've had a partner before, BLS partner, who on critical calls like, yeah, you can help me with this assessment, but if you're going to come in on a chest pain patient that is like symptomatic AFib RVR and be like, have you seen your pathophysiologist, before we even asked our OPQRST questions, I don't fucking care. I
I remember this.
I literally like step in front of me, ask the patient that is cool, pale, diaphoretic, and AFib RVR at a rate of 220. Have you seen your pathophysiologist or
Oh
your
man.
cardiopathophysicist? And I'm just like, or electrophysiologist. I was like, I literally do not care. So
Yeah.
then it turned into, well, but when this partner continues overstepping inappropriately, like not asking anything relevant, and is like, can't even do their job, then it turned into we have to have a boundaries conversation of, guess what? If it as soon as it turns ALS, shut the fuck up and move.
Yeah.
And
No.
I don't like being one of those people.
Same.
But even with communication of, hey, let's not ask the symptomatic chest pain patient, have you seen your cardio electrophysiologist or whatever? Like, let's not ask that. And then you do it again. It's like, okay, you don't know
This is
how
a problem.
you don't know how to function on this call.
Yeah.
So you're just not.
Well,
Like, sorry, just I want to put out there, I don't like being like that, but
no. No.
sometimes if you have the people that are not going to respect boundaries, you have to tighten that boundary.
Well, and I've had I guess the other phase of issues that I've had with coworkers is once I got my medic. Well, no, this is still part of the same part of the first initial phase. Newly certified EMT, fucking shit up, having to deal with stuff, cool. Brand new paramedic. And,
I think being a brand new paramedic in some ways was a lot harder with like the boundaries and people and all the things.
well, and I was having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. We were clearing up a call and we all sat around talking, and they're going to be finishing up their medic in May. But it's a degree program, so she's already gone through like a lot of the course in a program where they let you get your advanced during medic school, which I think is a good idea. But anyway,
I will
um,
stick to I'm good with it as a stepping stone, not as a career.
but me and her partner, who is an old friend of mine, we were telling her when you first get your medic, it's hell because you could have been the most jam up EMT. I mean, just a fucking rock star. Everybody loved working with you. Suddenly, everyone treats you differently. And you get in this tug of war of people telling you, oh, decide, take the lead, do this, do things. And then when you do what they tell you to do,
You're
they shit
arrogant.
on you for being arrogant and cocky and a son of a bitch and all that stuff. So I had plenty of partners where I had to sit them down and say, hey, because they would try and like, oh well, no, you need to do this way, you need to do that way. No, we're just gonna do that. We're just gonna do this. Like we're not gonna mess with all that. And I had to sit them down and tell them, saying, hey, like I get it, you've been doing this longer than me, but I need to learn these things myself. Obviously, if I'm fucking up and I'm gonna kill a patient, intervene. If I'm gonna harm somebody, intervene. But if it's just a style thing, which most of this job is,
Yeah.
most of your treatment pathway, the way you actually function, there's a lot of style involved in this. And you build that style by having experiences. You know what? Sometimes maybe you don't set up your IV, you don't do your IV setups properly, or you are very cumbersome in how you mix your meds and draw up stuff. It's okay. You'll learn. You'll figure it out, and that's okay. But I had to have those conversations with several people, both of which were twice my age at least, and tell them, hey, I need you to back off. I need you if it's a mistake that can be made and it's not going to hurt the patient, let me make the mistake. We can talk about it after, but let me run my call. Let me figure it out.
Well, I mean, how many times did you tell me that during paramedic school? Because
Hmm.
I had the reputation of being an awesome EMT, and I was just like, nah,
I told
these
you.
these people like me. It'll be fine. And I went to a damn good program that I will tell anybody you should go to this program for EMT and paramedic.
Hmm.
And I learned extensive pathophysiology and all of the things. And I had an excellent FTO who supported me in making decisions. And I wasn't overly confident, but I was comfortable that I got a good education. Like
Yeah.
there is a difference.
Yeah.
I also had the expectation that I would screw up at some point or another. And then starting as a paramedic, I literally within like I got through FTO time. But after FTO time, my EMT partners loved being with me, but other medics, which now years later I can say are fucking lazy, those medics literally started saying that I was a paragod that thought I knew everything and couldn't be
I
corrected.
love it when they
And
do that.
well, and I was just like, but literally, like, tell me how. And I still to this day, no matter how many years later, I still to this day, after even the most basic calls, even if it's BLS with an IV type call, like the most basic ALS call, I'll still look at the crew or my
Hmm.
partner or whoever and be like, do we have any questions, comments, concerns? Like, do you have any questions about why I made it ALS or why this
Hmm.
or stuff like that? Like, I want to be corrected and learn. But even with
Yeah.
that posture, when I first got my medic, I was a paragon.
Well, and part of what I have to deal with now, because I don't really have that anymore.
Hmm.
Like as far as the people like jumping down your throat trying to run the call for you. Like most of the time when I show up, other medics are like, hey, cool, do your thing. Like I don't, or I'll do the same to them. Like, hey, cool, I'm just here to help. Like you. Like I don't care. But I think now part of drawing the boundaries is holding other people to a standard and saying, "Hey, this is not acceptable for
Mm-hmm.
this patient. Like, we need to do some other thing." And there's ways to do it politely and not. you know, what?
Just finish what you were saying.
There's ways to do it politely and professionally, because obviously don't make a scene in front of the patient. But I've gone to where I can kind of give that look, and the medics who are usually kind of, kind of on the lazy, I just kind of look at them, and be like, "You want me to go ahead and get that 12 lead hooked up for you?" No, I'll do it. Okay, like,
I I think my favorite thing that I've come across relatively recently is the male some not all, some of the male medics don't know how to take me. Daniel and I have actually had this conversation a lot of times. They don't know how to take me because I'm smiley, I'm polite, I'm, hey, I'll help you, like, it kind of in the way that Daniel's
hmm
talking about, like, hey, do you want me to put on the 12 lead, like, is there anything I can do for you? But like, I can flip that switch, drop that smile in a hot minute. And where I disagree, and I guess you could say correct slash draw boundaries, is documentation. Which, I mean, we had two episodes of documentation. But what kills me is, like, you're not going to not document any IVs because you failed all of them and you stuck the patient 5 times. Like, that's not acceptable. So
yeah,
I will correct. Also, what kills me, and I think we mentioned it with like documentation, is especially in your narrative. Like, it can be as long or short as you want as long as the picture comes across. But like, what's gotten me, whether it's EMT or paramedic, is when our narrative completely contradicts our um activity log, but also like, don't take a full report from me and talk to the family and then in your narrative say the patient's mom when she explicitly multiple freaking times said that she's the grandma and looks like a grandma. Like, you need to have boundaries of what you're going to accept, especially when you're, I mean,
yeah,
responsible, when you're
yeah.
responsible. Um I think along with documentation and coworkers, what we kind of creep into it on, well, on the field side, is having boundaries with supervisors, but also on the
Oh, I love this
education
topic.
side, but on the education side is having boundaries between preceptors and students. Obviously, don't sleep with your coworkers, don't sleep with students, like, make it appropriate, all of
hmm
the things. But I want to speak
but
on
I
the,
love sleeping with my coworker.
are we employed at the same place?
We did not meet at
Yes.
work, and we were not at the same place working when we met each other.
That's not
So,
even what I was going with. Yes, that is true. But what I was going to say is, are we technically on the roster at the same place? Yes. Are we on the same shift? No.
no,
So like,
no, I know.
we're
I
half
was
a coworker.
playing along.
I know, but I'm just saying we're half a coworker.
hmm
Anyways, before we jump into supervisors and management, I want to put out there, I know that working in this field, especially, making friends on a truck and all the rest of it, like especially with EMTs, EMT students, etc., and then they decide to go back to paramedic, that working in this field and befriending people, it can be hard setting professional boundaries when your friends come to school where you are either a primary instructor, an adjunct, modular instructor, whatever. And I think what applies for the education side, but also the supervisor management side, is not showing favoritism. Need to have that understanding of, like, yes, I understand that you have this, this, and this going on, but it's not going to be an excuse to be lazy. Or, give somebody a better grade at clinicals because you're like, oh, they just had a bad day. It's like, no, they really do suck at this skill. Like, maybe you need to spend more time on it, but like, not fluffing their grade. Or like, if they're doing new hire orientation ride time and saying, hey, they did great during orientation, they're ready to be on their own, when really they're certifiably stupid. Like,
Yeah.
just because they're friends. Giving special privileges, you have to have a boundary.
hmm
Giving special privileges is not going to help anybody. If anything, it's going to be dangerous to pretty much everybody. And you're not doing your friend a favor. That's the thing. Same with children. You have to give tough love. Like, punish, criticize, pick a word, whatever, but also be like, I'm doing this for you. I'm hard on you during clinicals or class or orientation time to make you better because I want you to succeed. The
hmm
people that are going to give you a pass, they don't love you. They don't care about you. They're going to let you have an easy time and it's not going to help you long term.
Yeah.
Same,
Well, and
same with partners. Same with partners.
you and I are both products of the same program with the same lead instructor who was that way, who would be very, very hard on us
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of making us better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that said, that's a very different relationship than your supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there should be training going on with supervisors and management, but it's a different relationship. And just because you wear a different colored shirt or have a different title after your name doesn't mean that you have the right to treat people however you want. Doesn't fly. Doesn't work. That's not how this is supposed to be. Maybe that worked in the fucking 80s. Maybe it worked even in the fucking 90s. Doesn't work anymore. And what?
Sorry. I was just gonna be a smart ass to be like, we're not gonna talk about the 2000s, the 2010s, or the 2010. Just never mind. My ADD. It kept going. Sorry.
Okay.
I started counting by tens. I'm sorry.
But that model of leadership of, oh well, I'm your boss, so I can talk to you however I want. That doesn't work anymore. It didn't work to begin with, and it's why we have perpetuated the generational curse of outdated, poor management and the good old boy system in public service, because we never corrected the problem to start with, and the people that actually cared enough to say something about it were fucking beat down and usually run off from wherever they worked. So part of drawing boundaries with management is very much like what we said with other coworkers of there's a limit to how you can speak to me. And you should draw boundaries between your personal life and work. And like I talked about in the last shift short, that doesn't mean that you quiet quit, that you drop down to doing the bare minimum. No, you do your job, you do it well, you do it excellently. But you do part of having a healthy mental that's a poor choice of words. Part of propagating good mental health is not so much compartmentalization, but having those boundaries and saying, hey, when I'm not at work, I need to be present where I'm at. I can't have my brain stuck back at work. I can't have my brain stuck back in that place because that's going to negatively affect my family. It's going to negatively affect my own, like, just day-to-day life. Sure, when you're young and dumb and full of cum, it works, but you can't sustain that. Like, especially when you get to our age, you need that break. You need to be able to separate some from it. But even while you're at work, you should not be afraid to challenge abuse of authority. And let me be very clear with that. I'm not saying that, oh, if you just feel personally inconvenienced, then you need to go pick a battle. No. Grow up, be a fucking adult. But when you do have a legitimate abuse of a position, when you have people who are not leading effectively, and not just not leading effectively like in a passive sense, but they are actively being toxic as a leader, you should challenge that. You should say shit about that the right way in the right time, but fucking go after it. Because if we don't, all we're going to do is just to create a positive feedback loop. These people can keep getting away with shit. And so, no, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go start a revolution wherever you work, but challenge those things. Step up, and especially in the culture that we live in right now, where just culture has become such a thing, and I think that just culture is often abused in a lot of ways, but it also does provide an avenue to actually deal with legitimate abuses of authority.
Mm-hmm.
And just because someone's supervisor doesn't mean they can come and talk to you like shit. And doesn't mean that they have a right to single you out over stuff. Doesn't mean that they have a right to just be obstinate and make decisions based on personal fiat. Like, you shouldn't accept that. Now, with the flip side of that too, as a leader, as someone in a position of authority, you need to have boundaries with your people. Yes, you should be engaging with them. You should be familiar with them to the degree of you know what makes them tick, you know what they're interested in, you know what they want, you know what they thrive on. But you need to not perpetuate a clique. You need to not let you have your little fan group that you kind of let get away with everything. That shit's toxic as hell. That will break the spirit of all of the good people that you have working for you.
Well, and I think something that goes along with that is gonna be
It stopped.
it left me.
It stopped all the things. Listen, it's been a long day. It's been a long day for everybody. So
It completely fucking left me. I had the perfect thought too.
you had a verbal stroke, is what you're telling me.
I mean, it wasn't just a verbal stroke. It was like a full like stroke, like lost all facets.
It's fine. It's fine. And let me tell you something. And this is true for all boundaries, not just in the context of the workplace, but when you step up and set a boundary, we often try and talk ourselves out of it because we're afraid of something bad happening. We're afraid of we're going to lose our job. They're going to get pissed off. They're going to have this. They're going to do that. I will promise you, you will gain so much more respect from people who don't even like you if you can draw boundaries. If you can draw those lines in the sand and say no further, you will gain a hell of a lot more respect from people. But guess what? If you are actually fighting from a moral high ground, what are they going to do to you? If you have a quote leader, person in a position of authority who is abusing their authority, they're abusing their role, they are actively perpetuating toxicity in the environment, go for it. Go for it. If they're being hypocrites, if it's my favorite is the rules for ye, not for me thing, I will get, I've been known to get a little petty with that shit. I'm not even gonna lie. Like maybe I've pushed the limit on professionalism a little bit before, but I just have no patience for it. If that's the way you're gonna be, if you are gonna behave like that, then all bets are off. You have no moral high ground, and you are fair game for what you have coming. And I will die on that hill. But anyway, what's gonna happen? What can happen to you? Okay, you get a target on your back. Do your job well. Do your job well. They
Well,
can't fire
and
you if you're doing your job right.
well, and here's the thing. Even if they try to do like, South Carolina, for example, is a right to hire, right to fire state. Even if they decide to fire you for some reason, one, there's always a possibility that you could challenge it for
Wrongful termination.
wrongful termination. But you really think that you're not going to get a job? Here's the thing. You may not want said job at said service, but it doesn't mean that you can't get one. The people that genuinely can't get one have probably worked at every single service and have burned every single bridge in the area.
I just talked about this about that specifically in the shift short.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how it is in everywhere else, but around here, if you're a medic who can't get a job, it's your own damn fault that you can't get a fucking job.
Or you refuse to go to said service because of whatever. But it's like if you're desperate enough and you just need money to live,
Yeah.
go somewhere temporarily. Granted, the really sad thing is we could probably go to QT for the same hourly
Oh, I
pay.
know that I could go get a job at BMW and make what I make hourly. Like a non-skilled factory line job and get paid
Yeah,
exactly or better than what I make right now.
I'd rather be a paramedic.
I mean, yes, I would too. I would too.
I worked at BMW for a very brief period of time. I think that's like the only job that I ever quit because I was like, I can't do that. I can't do this. This is not for me.
Well, and when you have a reputation for setting boundaries and sticking to them, I mean, you'd be amazed at how easy it is to go back to old jobs where maybe you thought that you burned a bridge or just maybe it wasn't,
Ruffled feathers.
yeah. But I mean, trying to think of how many services there's 4 different services that I have worked at in either a part-time or full-time capacity at different times.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. For 2 of them, I've worked there 3 different times. Seriously, 3 different times in different capacities. Once, usually for each of them at least once as full-time and then later on as a part-time gig.
Hmm.
Left on my own terms, left on good terms with working a notice. Well, there's one of them I didn't work it. I didn't work a notice, but I was basically told, "Hey, we don't blame you. It's fine. We do the same thing."
Yeah.
Actually, that happened twice too because
Hmm.
of the job that I was offered. They were like, "Yeah, no, we don't blame you at all. Like, go. It's fine. We're not worried about it." But and I could go back to those and still get a job. And that's part of because you draw those boundaries, you stay consistent with them, and you fight the right battles. That's where you gain respect. If you fight every battle that comes across, then you're not going to get any respect. It's not going to work.
So I know it's kind of a slight sidestep, kind of not. It's still kind of along the boundaries. But I saw I want to say it was a video. I honestly can't remember. But talking about the whole like working a notice thing, I saw an interesting. I don't think I would ever do it, but it was interesting that if you work in a state that is a right to hire, right to fire state, and the job can fire you without notice at any given time, that the justification is, why do I have to work a notice for you when they
I
can
mean,
turn
yeah.
around and fire you? So the justification is, well, if you can fire me without notice, then I can quit without notice, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't tarnish my reputation.
Yeah.
Not saying to go do that, just
No.
as a slight sidestep, it was an interesting school of thought that, I mean, it is true. I mean, you can be fired without notice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think to kind of bring all of this to bear on the topic of mental health, because that is our theme for the month and what all of us are thinking about this month.
And struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Um, what happens when you don't maintain boundaries? Because, like I said, a lot of people are scared to draw boundaries. They're scared of it.
I remember. Sorry, I remember. It finally came back to me.
No.
If you make me forget, I will. I will.
Meow 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 meow.
Stop. You're being so mean.
So mean. Stop. Did you forget what it was?
Yes. God damn it. No.
Sorry.
Supervisors and QAs. We were talking about drawing a boundary with when we're going to do stuff. So I mean, it still ties into mental health, but like, you do the job. Nobody can argue that we have a stressful job. Even if you have a low call volume, it's having the heightened anxiety that you can catch a call at any given time. It's like that tones are going to drop maybe when you're in the middle of eating or bathroom or sleep or whatever. When you go home, you do need to draw boundaries. Like, I understand that there's a lot of us that have some kind of personal relationship with coworkers, supervisors, whatever, outside of the job. And it's one thing, like Daniel and I normally do not answer QA emails, phone calls, text messages, whatever, from like certain people for certain things. But like if a supervisor or a coworker,
When we're not at work.
sorry,
Just
when we're
clarify that.
when we're not
Yeah.
at work. But like if someone texts about something non-work related, it's like, okay, I can talk to this person like generally about non-work related stuff, but our boundary is we're not talking about work. Now, obviously there are some exceptions. Somebody directly calls at us like, "Hey, do us a favor, can you please just handle this QA, email or whatever." It's like, "Okay, maybe
Mhm.
like just this once." But it's not like every single shift we're bringing uh reports home and we're not constantly like making phone calls. And I understand like going out and hanging out with your coworkers and other people that you run calls with, fire departments, off shift, but you need to have non-public service friends too.
Mhm.
Because what do all of us tend to do when we're all together? You're talking about something random about your children, and then all of a sudden it turns into, "Oh, did you run this call?" And then guess what? Your work life is now in your personal life at a family dinner. And I'm not saying that you can never share stories at a family dinner, but like if you're only friends with those people, if you only do stuff with those people, and that's all you talk about, there's no work life boundary. So
Mhm.
it's like if we hang out with, we do have a couple that I went to school with the wife. You know, we're best friends with them. I went to paramedic school with her, and she's not on a truck, but like she's still working in the medical field. Like we may have shop talk for like 10 minutes, or if like something crazy happened, like okay, cool, we'll mention it. But how often do we actually talk about medicine or EMS or public service or
I
anything?
hate sharing, like, I hate sharing stories of calls with friends. I like talking about what other people do for work.
Well,
Well,
but when we're together.
yeah, yeah. Well, and again, that just goes to showcase, like, when you don't have boundaries, you lose a sense of control of what's going on around you. You lose the ability to, like, stay in charge of the narrative of your life, and it's very easy to suddenly let other people live rent free in your head. Let what people say live rent free in your head. When you don't have any boundaries, any filter for these things, anything is going to wreck your day, is going to make you stressed out, is going to put you in a depressive spiral. Like,
Well, you feel like you never have a break.
yeah, yeah. And it's, you need to have those boundaries that you can rest on and rely on. And it does give you a sense of power. It does give you a sense of control because you draw those lines, you make it very known respectfully. And when people stick to them, cool. That's great. And if they violate them, hey, you shut it down. Shut it down quick. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and my final thing that I want to say is consistency. Because if you set up a boundary, but then somebody tests it just to see if you're going to stick to it and you don't stick to it, then they're going to keep pushing. And what was the point of the initial boundary?
Yep.
You have to have
Yep.
consistency, and eventually people may stop pushing it or they'll circle around and push it. But you have to consistently have that boundary so you are protected and other people know what to expect.
Yeah. So think about that. You know, when you're evaluating your own mental health, when you're evaluating what stresses you out, what has you frustrated, what you're sad about, all of that, think in terms of, okay, what are the things that I'm allowing in that I shouldn't? What are the things that are affecting me that I do have control over? What are the things that I'm allowing to affect me? And start being a gatekeeper. And it's hard. It sucks. But once you start doing it, life is so much better. I can't tell you how many things now that used to drive me up the fucking walls that now I'm just like, oh, okay,
Eh,
cool.
eh.
Like, no big deal. Doesn't matter. So there's a certain freedom in that, you know, and that's a common phrase from Jocko Willink that, you know, discipline equals freedom, but it's true.
Mhm.
That level of discipline to maintain those boundaries is going to give you so much more freedom on the back end that it is beyond, it's not just worth it, it's necessary.
Mhm.
Got anything else you want to add in to wrap up?
Really, I think the biggest thing is consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. Be consistent with yourself and then with everybody else around you after that. So
Start with your little circle and then make it bigger.
if you learned anything, if you enjoyed what you heard, awesome. Share it with your friends. If you were offended, good. Good. You needed to be. And definitely tell your friends about that too. As always, join us on the Discord server. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Do it now.
Right
Don't
now,
wait.
before
Right
you
now.
forget.
Do it. Okay? You think they got it?
I don't know.
Hit subscribe. Do it now. Bye, guys. Have a good night. See ya.
Wait.
Mow. Mow. We need help. Bye.